Zach Mitchell. I'm the assistant nonfiction editor for the tusculum.edu, and today I'm joined by award-winning writer, essayist, lecturer, professor emerita of the University of Rhode Island, and more recently, the judge of our 2024 Nonfiction Chapbook Prize, Miss Mary Cappello. Mary, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me about these amazing essays.
It's my pleasure.
So, just going straight into it, and kind of before we talk about the essays themselves, I wanted to first ask you kind of like what your process was of kind of like what you were looking for with these essays. What separates the best from the good?
Hmm, great question. Well, first of all, I like to say that I don't look for things when I judge, when I serve as a judge for a contest.
Mhm.
I like to think that I'm going to be found by a great piece of writing. So I try not to have a set of predispositions or, things I'm looking for or um, it's of course impossible not to have bring your own aesthetic or your own taste to any kind of practice of judging, but I really do try to stay really open and to let the writing work on me, let the writing find me, let the writing bring me to a place that I otherwise would not arrive. And I think what distinguishes, you know, what makes certain pieces rise to the top, though I must say that every piece has great merit. And I don't think you make your way into a contest if you haven't written something extremely fine. So, as we talk about what made the winners strong, I certainly don't wish to suggest that the others were weak,
Mhm.
because the problem with a contest is that everybody doesn't get to win. I always tell my students this: if you enter a contest, the great thing is that you can win. But if you don't get recognized, there's nothing lost. You
Mhm.
just move on
Exactly.
to the
Yeah.
next contest, right? But certainly, yeah, there's a big difference for me where nonfiction writing is concerned between writing that is transforming, doing the work of remaking, where something is undergoing a metamorphosis, where there's some transmutation of the material, right? Of the so-called experience that gives rise to the essay,
Mhm.
and simply what I call transcribing or accounting. So if the essay is really reads like an account, that to me is journalism. That's not literary nonfiction. That's not the essay as we know it as a literary form. And so that's key for me, right? Transformation versus transcription. Yeah. And also some measure of experimentation, though I certainly wouldn't require it in terms of choosing, but I think we can probably agree that each of these pieces is its own form in a way,
Mhm.
I mean,
Exactly.
the winner is perhaps the most, in quotation marks, conventional, only because it does rely on a narrative framework. But there's nothing conventional about it otherwise.
Mhm.
And but the other two, are really playing with form. The form is unanticipated, and there's something very poetic about all three of the pieces, I would say, as well.
Why did you want to emphasize that like longer works were welcome? Um,
Hmm.
is it that because like the longer essay struggles to be published?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's always been interesting, right? How do these sort of conventions come to be that an essay should be 15 pages long or something like that,
Hmm.
or a book, for example. Look at a lot of the books on your shelves, especially those published in the last, you know, 40 years or so.
Hmm.
And you
Yeah,
might
exactly.
discover that there's a page count. It's 225 pages. And why is that? Well, that does have to do with cost. Anything beyond that, and you start to rack up more money. And it's the same actually with literary journals, as we know,
Hmm.
especially in the age of print, right?
Hmm.
That it's going to cost you more to print more pages. And so this length matter, I think, has often been driven by economics. We're in the digital age now, and so much is read online. It seems to me that those kinds of strictures can loosen, but also, there's so much that can be done with longer form. And
Hmm.
some subjects dictate that they really be treated in a much a longer fashion, so that's why I wanted to be open to length, and exactly for the reason that you gave, because for the most part, even across the board where digital journals are concerned, there still is a pretty strict page count in a lot of cases. It's harder to find places that will accept longer essays. And by long, I mean, as long as, why not 50 pages? I love that the Tusculum Reviews contest is a chapbook contest. And so that, if you want a substantive chapbook, it seems to me that it doesn't really make sense to have an essay that's 8 pages long to win a chapbook contest, unless it's absolutely remarkable, in the way that like Natalia Ginsburg's very, very short essays are. It's actually very, very, very hard to write a short essay that is a masterpiece. Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy. It's like the compression of poetry is called for. Yeah.
So kind of jumping straight into the essays, what kind of spoke to you in choosing our winner and honorable mention? I think you kind of touched on this already a little bit.
Yeah, and in the blurb that I wrote for it, which I hope people will read, but the essay is called "The Nature of Alaska: An Introduction to Familiar Plants, Animals, and Outstanding Natural Attractions." There were so many things that spoke to me in this piece, and I would read it again and again. It's a kind of writing, great writing does this, demands that we read it again, delivers something different each time that you read it. The writer has a command of language at the level of the word, the sentence, and the paragraph. And then she knows how to work in this piece, parallel places and lives and stories alongside one another. It's a very difficult thing to do, right? So she moves between her family of origin, who are Brooklyn based, and the family that she's getting to know on a ship in Alaska that is a salmon fishing ship. And, she's got the ability to create atmosphere, to bring characters to the page. I feel like I really spent time with these people, the captain, her father, her mother, and her, right? This persona, the narrator, who are, of course, with for the course of the piece. There's more than that too, though, and it's the fact that this essay engages in what I would call compassionate critique. And by that, what I mean by that is that it is a meditation ultimately on misogyny, and with two men in particular who are the subject of that misogyny, if you will. But she treats these figures with a kind of understanding. And that isn't to say that she forgives them. That's not at play at all. Rather that they're fully formed. There's something very human about the interactions between people in this essay.
Yeah.
And about the way in which the characters, if you will, the people are sketched. But again, when it comes back to it, this is the real thing. This is real writing. This person has a command of sentences. I don't know how else to put it, right? The sensuous nature of sentences, the tempo of certain words, their texture. And she somehow manages to bring all of that beauty, to the fore at the same time that what she's doing is really offering us a very moving critique of kind of intimate relationships, and their failures and their successes. I believe this might be her first publication, and that is just tremendous, right? This is the beauty of a contest. So the Tusculum Review has just discovered, to my mind, an extraordinary writer, and we can say we were the first.
It's always exciting when we find someone, something that's really truly remarkable, and we get to have the privilege to publish it and kind of say, yeah, we were the first. It's always nice.
Yeah, it's quite wonderful. And for the writer as well, to be able to, in a sense, be discovered. And yeah.
So there was also kind of a sense of lyricism with all three essays. Do you seem or do you think that lyricism why does it really work so well in nonfiction as it seems to?
Yes, the lyricism, of course, is works hand in hand with what we were talking about earlier. That something's being transformed, that something metamorphic's going on.
Hmm.
That there's something textural.
Yeah.
That I'm in the realm of a music here. Each of these writers is giving me a different type of music. And I generally don't read the news in order to be invited into a different form of song. And that's why I want to keep making this distinction between journalism, which, at its best is great on its own, but
Hmm.
it is distinct from the literary art that is the kind of nonfiction that you're publishing and that, we're honoring here with this contest.
So uh as an undergrad myself, I've been like over the summer like writing pieces and sending them out to like literary journals and contests and stuff like that. Um Mostly to kind of build um my my publication cred before I start applying for grad school um later in the
Sure.
year. So why should writers, young and old, new especially, seek out um these avenues of potential publication and recognition?
I really think the reason to put your work into that world, into the larger world of readers, is in part about gaining community. So when
Yes.
your piece, right, appears in a literary journal, it's it's also experiencing the beauty of the piece appearing alongside that of other writers. And each journal has its own aesthetic and its own um, image, if you will, and its own project. And so you become part of that. And writing, as you know, can be a very, very solitary and lonely activity. It takes hours and hours, as we know, right?
Yes.
Hours and hours and hours and days and hours. And
Mhm.
we're wondering, like, why are we still sitting at this desk when we could be outside running around?
Mhm.
um, and so, wow, that part of it is really important, right? To be able to say, in the world now, and somebody's reading, and I'm reading somebody else, and they're reading me, and we're in dialogue. But I also like to think about how, publication isn't just about your work appearing in print, right? The making public of the work can happen in a lot of different ways. And not all writers like to give readings, but I think that readings are a really great way to bring your work to an audience, and to find its performative potential too. Um, right? So lots of ways of making public, and that in the end, I don't think that what we're doing is meant to be kept to ourselves. You have writers who say, I write for myself. I'm not sure that any of us really writes for ourselves, because I think that the moment you put it onto the page, you're either unconsciously or consciously anticipating a reader.
Mhm. Yeah, that sense of community is something that we hold strong to at Tusculum. Our student-focused journal, Sit Lux, that we publish in the spring. Um,
Mhm.
I I had the pleasure to kind of head it with my co-editor Kirsten Paxton. Um, that was a lot of fun, but it was also really nice to see like and kind of pull together a lot of the talent in our English department, our small but mighty
Yeah,
English department. Um,
absolutely.
Pull everyone together, both um, with literary work, but also we also pull in student artwork too, just to kind of
That's
pull the arts
fabulous. And
together.
congratulations for heading it. That's brilliant. Yeah. It
It,
also becomes an archive, right? It becomes an
oh, it is.
archive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
yeah, this year's volume was our third. So we're still relatively new, but it's a lot of fun every year, and I know a lot of people have fun submitting to our Curtis Owens in conjunction with like our choosing what we want to publish in the Sitlux, I guess. So kind of beginning to wrap up real quick, I wanted to ask you about your own work actually. Looking at your website, marycappello.com, which our lovely viewers can check out once they get done with this video. A lot of your work seems to focus on like moods, dream states, the bardo, like intimacy and family, and a lot more. What is your most recently completed book about your mother? How does it tie into the themes of your past works?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I would say the only way that it really ties in maybe to the themes of my past work is insofar as part of it deals with critiques of the medical establishment at the same time that, I pay homage to the incredible people in healthcare professions who were part of the team who helped my mother to come to the end of her life. And but there are many, many things that still don't get talked about. And especially my mom had ovarian cancer. And so the book brings to light some aspects of that undergoing that doesn't get a lot of play. As well, I think as a culture, and it might sound like a cliche, but we still don't seem to know how to write about or talk about death. And so I experienced bearing witness to my mom's process as a sacred kind of share. But I was learning things every day that undid what I thought I knew. And in the end, I really had to face my ignorance. And so this is one way in which the book shares a history with my other work. It begins and kind of maintains an investment in what I cannot know, but seek to dwell with nevertheless. The kind of companion. And my mom did not die peaceably. And so many of the representations of death and dying that were given by popular culture and even in literary texts, you know, um, don't don't dare kind of look at this. Don't dare look at the real fact of the matter. I've come to understand that death is a labor, and I have not given birth myself, but I have kind of wondered as a result of being with my mom whether women not so much will have an easier time dying than men, but that I do believe, having watched my mom, that there's a relationship most definitely between giving birth and dying. And I also think that the dying really are, once we are in that state, that we will all, we all share. We share it, and yet it's absolutely apart from the world in which the living reside. And this is the difficulty. We want to be there. We want to be able to say, they still hear us. Hearing's elastic. Oh, she's hearing everything you say. You're like, really? I mean, why can't we accept that actually dying is this profound, again, it's a moment of transformation. And it's I really do think it's quite apart from living. And that at a certain point, the bardo is a place that the living cannot enter. So, but I don't know if that answers your question about, what relationship does it have to the rest of my work? I think the book is orchestrated like a poem. It's put together the way collections of poetry are. And in that sense, it bears a relationship to my second book, Awkward. But Awkward was orchestrated like a kind of dictionary, non-alphabetical dictionary, non-alphabetical dictionary. And Frost Will Come, the book that I've just completed, really does move from, it has a kind of narrative movement that starts with grief, which is different to my mind from mourning. And so it starts in a very raw place, and it moves into places of where the experience is much more deeply assimilated. But yeah, it's totally in conversation with my mom's poetry. She was a poet. And all my life, my work has been in conversation with my mother's work. So this was no surprise. but it's much, much, much more explicitly so. Thanks for asking about it.
No, no, of course.
That's actually was the heart of my mood book, why I was so interested in writing about mood,
Mhm.
because it seems to govern everything we do, this thing called mood, but try to grasp it. And you won't be able to. It's like
Exactly.
grabbing it at air. Yeah.
So one last thing real quick.
Sure.
I also love to ask writers what they're currently working on or um what their next big project is. If you're willing to share at all,
Absolutely, sure.
anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I usually don't work on more than one thing at a time, but right now I am moving between and among three different projects, believe it or not. One is something that well, both of these projects I've wanted to pursue for years. And one of them is a collection of what I call studies, because I don't think that literary etudes exist. And I wanted to investigate the nature of study in the digital age and whether it's possible to actually study anymore.
I
And
like
I
that.
recently was invited, thank you. I was recently invited to Oxford University to give a plenary talk as part of a symposium on what they call their creative criticism. And it gave me the opportunity to spell out this project on this study um, and to kind of workshop it with a group of scholars there. And so that has really, been a wonderful spur to coming back to it and to hopefully finally starting to bring it to fruition. The other project that got long postponed is a book on dormancy and dormant states. And really, it's to be a collection of meditations on the nature of promise and late bloomerism and incubation and hibernation and what happens in the dark and how things come into being. How is
Mhm.
anything birthed? Um, the great political philosopher Hannah Arendt has theorized that we are not just mortals, we are natals. And that what distinguishes humans
Mhm.
as a species is that we are born and that we can continue to be born.
Mhm.
Um, and then on a maybe lighter note, or at least a minimalist note, I want to write an essay, but it might morph into a small book on the pep talk as a genre. The pep talk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's
So, I
interesting.
wrote this book on the lecture, and actually study something that I was brewing for me before the lecture. Um, I'm interested in what I call remediations of knowledge. How do we produce knowledge, receive knowledge, convey knowledge, etc. And believe it or not, I say believe it or not, you'd have to know me to know why I would say believe it or not. I started to watch Friday Night Lights a few months ago. I don't
Mhm.
know, this show
Uh-huh.
like set in
Yeah.
Texan town, small town
Mhm.
Friday night football. And it's a bit of a soap opera-ish
Mhm. Yeah.
show. I have no interest in football, okay? Zach, I just want you to know. I'm sure it's a wonderful sport, beautiful in many ways. Also, horrible in the ways that it causes brain damage. But
Mhm.
it's the contemporary gladiatorial sport. But okay, this show manages to make it balletic, and you get totally absorbed in who's going to win, and the cinematography is great. But
Mhm.
all this is to say, I started to become really compelled by the coaches' pep talks.
Mhm.
They're brilliant.
Mhm.
And I
There's some
started
good
to think
ones.
like, yeah, right? The pep talk is a genre. What is the nature of the pep talk? Where does it hail? What elements is it supposed to have? How is it supposed to drive people? And then could I find pep talks in places where you least expect them? And then, maybe needless to say, I think the subtext of this is that the political speech probably shares a kinship with the pep talk. And right now we're in, there's no word for the complicated place we find ourselves right now, right?
Mhm.
On the eve of the 2024 election in the United States, and um, with very different styles or lack thereof of speech giving. And so, yeah, I think that there's probably going to be some element woven into this of what what distinguishes the pep talk from a political speech, and why we might need a pep talk from time to time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know if I've ever. You could come up with a new genre. That's smart. That's really I like that.
A collection of pep talks?
Collection
Yeah,
of
it could
pep
be a
talks.
bestseller. Could be a
Mhm,
bestseller.
mhm. You never
The
know.
bestseller that I'm yet to write, Zach. The bestseller that I have yet to write.
But aside from
Yeah.
that, I think that's all I've got. So
Okay. Wonderful. And we look forward to seeing um Mirela Music's piece in print,
mhm,
right, in the chapbook, and
mhm.
very exciting. Really looking forward to that. It's been great working with you too on the
Yeah,
contest.
you as
Yeah.
well. It's been awesome and a
Yeah.
lovely pleasure to speak with you as too.
Okay. We'll say goodbye for now then.
Alrighty, we will. Hopefully we'll see each
Okay.
other um beyond the screen and in person.
That would be lovely.
Well,
Okay.
enjoy.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Enjoy your vacation.